Under the faint moonlight, a lost child stands trembling in the heart of the forest. One by one, 14 wolves step from the shadows, their eyes gleaming with a predatory glow. In that breathless instant, everyone expects the worst. But the astonishing moment that unfolds next will leave even the bravest souls utterly speechless. Twilight painted the sky in hues of purple and orange over Silverleaf Forest. The thick canopy rustled in a gentle breeze, concealing countless secrets within its sprawling depths. Somewhere in that vast expanse, 8-year-old Clara wandered, her tiny footsteps pressing into moss-laden ground. Normally fearless and guided by curiosity, she'd slipped away from her family's campsite, intent on catching fireflies in a jar. Yet the deeper she roamed, the more the towering pines and echoing bird calls turned from inviting to intimidating. Dusk rapidly dissolved into night. Clara realized her mistake. The familiar trail vanished, each direction seeming identical: dark trunks, dense undergrowth, the whisper of distant wildlife. Her heart began to pound. She clutched a small lantern, the flickering light dancing across enormous tree shadows. Panic flared within her. Where is the campsite? Meanwhile, at the forest's fringe, her parents frantically searched, calling her name into the deepening night. Local rangers were alerted, flashlights bobbing along the main trails. Despite the gathering rescue effort, no one anticipated the turn fate would take, a primal twist that defied logical explanations. Far inside Silverleaf's domain, Clara suddenly sensed eyes upon her. Low, deliberate movement. Her breath caught as she swung her lantern's glow in a trembling arc. Emerging from behind the ferns, a pair of gleaming eyes caught the dim light, then another, and another. One wolf, then two, then more, until she counted 14 silhouettes circling in the gloom. Wolves, a child alone. Instinct told her to run, but her feet rooted to the earth, fear and awe intermingling. What happened next would stun not only Clara's searching family, but everyone who heard the tale. Instead of the vicious attack that so many humans fear when facing wolves, these creatures performed something no one could have predicted. An act of unity, compassion, or ancient forest wisdom that would bind a little girl's destiny to the wild in a way that left the entire community speechless. In that hush of the forest, 14 wolves surrounded Clara, and the world held its breath, anticipating a horror that never came. Instead, an astonishing turn of events was about to unfold, one that redefined the boundary between humankind and nature's most misunderstood predators, forging a story that would echo through Silverleaf's glades long after the lantern's last flicker died away. The moment Clara realized she was encircled by wolves, her heart thundered in her chest. Each wolf stood tall, muscular, fur catching glimmers of moonlight. She'd never seen such large creatures up close. Their eyes shone with keen intelligence and something else, an emotion she couldn't quite name. If they wanted, they could close in, snapping jaws, ending her tiny existence in seconds. Yet they held back. Panting quietly, these wolves formed a ring of cautious curiosity rather than outright aggression. One particularly large male, his coat silvered and scarred from past battles, stepped forward. Clara's stomach twisted in terror, a sob catching in her throat. She tried to call for help, but her voice barely squeaked. Surprisingly, the alpha wolf paused only a short distance away, ears pricked. The entire pack waited, as though abiding by a silent command. Clara noticed how some wolves hovered close to each other, tails low yet wagging gently. No menacing growls, no baring of teeth. Instead, an alert, watchful stance, like guardians assessing a new presence in their domain. Slowly, her breathing steadied. Through the swirl of fear, she recalled bedtime stories about wolves leading lost children to safety. Could such myths be real? She mustered courage, shining her lantern at the alpha's feet. The big wolf flinched at the glare but did not retreat. Clara tentatively lowered the light, not wanting to scare him. In that single exchange, something passed between them, a minute shift from mutual wariness to a fragile trust. Elsewhere in the forest, her father Daniel pushed through brambles, voice cracking as he shouted, "Clara, Clara!" Her mother, June, fought tears, coordinating with rangers who spread out in all directions. Their flashlights flickered among dense pines. The forest's hush yielded only rustling leaves, no trace of the missing child. Anxiety pressed upon them, each second thickening the dread in their hearts. Meanwhile, back among the wolves, Clara tried to move. She hoped to circle around, slip away from the canines, but at her very first step, a smaller female wolf darted forward, blocking her path gently. The wolf let out a short bark, almost a caution. Clara froze. This new wolf had strange markings, her muzzle flecked with white. She blinked, uncertain how to interpret the sign. Don't go that way. Are they herding me? One by one, the wolves eased in, sniffing the air around her. She trembled, expecting a sudden lunge. Instead, the alpha wolf pressed its muzzle gently to her lantern, curious about its glow. The child stared in astonishment. They were investigating her, as though she were the oddity, not the other way around. An hour earlier, she'd been skipping after fireflies. Now she stood at the center of an ancient forest ritual, with 14 wolves studying her every breath. Even at 8, she sensed a solemn gravity in their eyes, like watchers of an older law than any man's. She remembered advice from wilderness guides: never run from wolves, remain calm. That advice felt nearly impossible to follow, but she breathed deep, recalling the stories of mother wolves adopting lost pups, or humans befriended by wild packs. The alpha lifted his head, gazing skyward. A hush fell among the pack. Then a single long howl shattered the silence, echoing through towering pines. Clara's pulse skipped. The other wolves joined in, harmonizing in a haunting chorus that made the night vibrate with their calls. So eerie, so beautiful. The child found tears rolling down her cheeks, not from fear alone, but from an overwhelming sense of awe. This was pure wilderness, unfiltered by human judgment. As the echoes faded, the alpha looked back at her. Something about that moment felt decisive, like a welcome into a realm humans rarely glimpse. A younger wolf stepped closer, sniffing her jacket as though searching for a clue. She remained still. The soft huff of its breath tickled her arm. Then it withdrew. The entire pack shifted formation, opening a small path between them. The alpha gave a short bark, glancing at Clara expectantly. Did they want her to follow? Heart hammering, she took a tentative step toward the gap. No wolf growled. Encouraged, she inched forward, the lantern bobbing in her trembling grip. The pack pressed in behind, forming a protective circle. She was walking within them now, 14 majestic predators, leading a lost girl deeper into the forest night. This is insane, she thought. But what choice do I have? Under normal circumstances, any adult would intervene, brand these wolves as lethal threats. But with no adult in sight, and the pack showing an inexplicable sense of guardianship, Clara felt safer with them than alone in the dark. Step by step, they traversed thick undergrowth. Low branches snagged her sweater. The alpha occasionally paused to ensure she kept pace. It was as though they had a destination. Miles away, Daniel and June fought despair. The rangers declared a search grid, radio chatter crackling with fruitless updates. No sign yet, repeated the stony voices. Some hinted a grim possibility. Wild animals could be a threat. June refused to accept that fate. She'd told Clara bedtime stories about forest friends, not forest foes. Soon, the wolves guided Clara to a small clearing. A shallow stream glimmered under moonlight. The pack fanned out, letting her approach the water's edge. Thirst and exhaustion caught up with her. She knelt to drink from the cool stream. Her reflection shimmered beside the reflection of the alpha wolf standing watch. As she quenched her thirst, she dared to rest a hand on the alpha's flank. He neither flinched nor snapped, merely watched her with luminous eyes. In that contact, girl's hand, wolf's fur, an unspoken bond was forged. It defied logic or reason, a gesture bridging species lines. She sensed no malice, no hunger in those eyes, only a silent vow. Stay near. We will keep you safe tonight. Nearby, lesser wolves scouted, rummaging at the water's edge. One came trotting back with a half-gnawed rabbit in its jaws. Clara recoiled, unsettled, but the pack simply retreated a bit to devour their meal, leaving her personal space intact. They recognized her as different, no predator, no threat. Starlight glittered overhead, while shadows danced around them. She realized how alone she was, yet the pack's presence offered strange solace. The alpha eventually nudged her away from the stream, leading her to a patch of soft moss beneath a bent pine. The wolves formed a perimeter, settling down as if for the night. Clara blinked in disbelief. Were they really letting her rest among them? Tucked against the alpha's warm fur, exhaustion overcame her. In a swirl of cedar scent and gentle panting, she drifted to sleep, never imagining the ripples that would fan outward when morning light revealed a child sheltered by 14 wolves, and the unthinkable alliance that would leave everyone speechless. Dawn broke in pale gold streaks, illuminating a forest draped in lingering mist. Clara stirred from slumber, cheeks cold from the night air, but her body surprisingly warm. She felt the steady pulse of the alpha's flank beneath her head, her living pillow. For a heartbeat, she forgot where she was. Then the realization hit her in a rush. I'm in the forest, with wolves. She sat upright, heart quickening. Yet the wolves around her simply yawned or stretched. One nipped playfully at another's ear, releasing a gentle whine. The alpha stood, shaking dew from his fur. Clara scanned the clearing, searching for any sign of her family or the rangers. Nothing but pine trunks and dappled morning light. A pang of homesickness surged. She missed her mother's hug, her father's jokes, but the pack gave her no time to dwell. The alpha signaled with a short bark, and once more they formed that informal escort, nudging her onward. Back at the campsite, chaos reigned. Exhausted rangers concluded an overnight search with no luck. Daniel paced, face pale from worry, while June sobbed quietly. A ranger commander approached them gently, suggesting they take a brief rest. "We'll continue by helicopter soon," he assured them. But the dread in their eyes spoke volumes. They feared the worst. Picturing Clara lost, perhaps cornered by wildlife, they never fathomed that the wildlife might be her guardians instead. Meanwhile, the wolves guided Clara along a winding path. She realized, in a childlike logic, that they must be leading her somewhere. Their pace was measured, occasionally pausing for her to climb over a log or catch her breath. The alpha never strayed far, alert to any sign of danger. Twice, distant sounds, maybe a bear or a wildcat, echoed through the pines, and the wolves stiffened, forming a protective wedge around their human charge. Nothing materialized, though, as if the pack's presence alone warded off threats. Occasionally, the smaller female with white-flecked muzzle sidled up to Clara, sniffing her hands or jacket. Once, the wolf even licked a scratch on Clara's arm, as though mothering her. A bizarre comfort welled in the girl's chest. She thought of how bedtime stories claimed wolves had unwavering loyalty within the pack. Perhaps they extended that loyalty to her, at least for now. After an hour or more, they reached a narrow ridge overlooking a valley. Clara's eyes widened at the sweeping panorama. Silver haze draped pine-covered slopes, the morning sun painting the horizon. The alpha sat, tail curled around his paws, watching her reaction. She gulped, stepping near the edge with caution. In the distance, she spotted the faint shimmer of a lake, glimpses of open ground, a surge of hope. Maybe that's near the campsite. But the wolves seemed more interested in the vantage point for themselves, ears pricked for any approaching sound. Then a flash in the sky caught Clara's attention. Was that a helicopter? She glimpsed a whirring shape far off, possibly scanning the forest. She jumped, waving her arms, yelling with all her might. The alpha's ears flattened at her sudden outburst, but Clara persisted, shouting for rescue. However, the chopper soared away, oblivious. Tears pricked her eyes. She slumped in disappointment, but a gentle nudge from the alpha's muzzle pressed into her side, as if urging her not to despair. The pack descended the ridge, continuing westward. Each passing minute chipped away at her hunger. Her stomach growled loudly. She clutched it, cheeks burning with embarrassment. Did wolves understand hunger in a human? Possibly. One younger wolf dashed into the underbrush, re-emerging with a small rodent squirming in its jaws. The wolf dropped it near Clara's feet, an offering. The girl's stomach lurched. She couldn't possibly eat that raw living creature. She stared, tears in her eyes, apologizing softly. The wolf cocked its head, confused, then retreated with its meal to devour in private. After a short while, the pack found a shallow creek. Clara drank greedily, though her belly still ached. The wolves themselves lapped the water, then busied themselves with sniffing the ground, scanning the breeze. She thought about the raw survival skills these animals possessed. They thrive here, yet I can't even find a snack without my parents. A swirl of gratitude for the wolves' protection and sorrow for her own helplessness warred within. In the late morning, the alpha halted suddenly, ears high. The rest of the pack froze, bristling. Clara's heart jumped. Danger. She ducked behind a thick trunk, peering ahead. The wolves parted, letting the alpha step forward to investigate a sound drifting from behind some dense shrubs. She heard faint human voices. Could it be the rangers or local hikers? Her pulse soared with hope. Creeping forward, she glimpsed through branches. Indeed, two men in ranger uniforms scanning the area, calling out. Instinctively, Clara wanted to run to them, but the alpha blocked her, eyes fixed on the men. A few younger wolves growled softly. They see humans as potential threats. Clara realized she needed to show she was safe among the wolves, not a hostage. Summoning courage, she whistled a short note, a signal her father had taught her. The men snapped their heads up. They spotted her figure behind the alpha, a sight that nearly made them drop their gear. A small child flanked by huge wolves. One ranger raised his rifle in reflex. The wolves tensed, growls deepening. Fear seized Clara. One wrong move could spark violence. She flung her arms out wide, stepping in front of the alpha, trying to convey, "Don't shoot, they're not harming me." A wave of dread pulsed through the clearing. The two men realized the precarious standoff. For an agonizing minute, nobody moved. The alpha's hackles lifted at the raised rifle. The rangers, hearts pounding, recognized that they might gun down wolves if they felt threatened. Meanwhile, Clara shook her head wildly, tears brimming. No, please, no. This scenario could unravel everything. If the men spooked the pack, the wolves might attack in defense or scatter, leaving Clara alone again. Finally, one ranger, mouth agape, carefully lowered his weapon, motioning for calm. In a halting voice, he called, "Little girl, are you all right? Your parents are looking for you." She nodded furiously, voice trembling. "Don't hurt them, please." The other ranger stammered into his radio, alerting the search party. Tension remained high. The alpha wolf watched warily, stepping closer to Clara as if to shield her from potential harm. In that surreal tableau, child wolves, armed rangers, time seemed to stand still. The forest hush pressed in, broken only by the muffled static of the radio. Back away from them slowly, one ranger whispered to Clara, but she refused, shaking her head. "They protected me. They're my friends," she murmured. The wolves, for their part, made no aggressive move, merely poised to react if threatened. The question hung, could the men coax Clara away without triggering a violent confrontation? Thus, the day's second improbable standoff began, leaving the rangers astounded. 14 wolves surrounding a single child, who seemed more afraid for the wolves than herself. This confrontation would ripple outward, soon drawing in more rescuers and culminating in an event that no one in Silverleaf County would ever forget. A hush blanketed the scene, 2 rangers with rifles lowered, a child flanked by 14 massive wolves. Birdsong ceased, as if nature itself sensed the precarious balance. Clara could practically taste the fear emanating from the men. Meanwhile, the alpha wolf huffed softly, hackles half raised, uncertain whether these humans posed a threat. The older ranger, Harlan, had served in Silverleaf for decades, familiar with the region's fauna. He knew a cornered wolf pack spelled disaster, especially with pups or a perceived pack member at risk. Yet here was a child among them. He called out, voice quivering, "Clara, we're here to help. Let us take you home." She glanced back at the alpha, tears in her eyes, torn between relief at rescue and loyalty to her protectors. She managed a shaky breath, stepping forward a fraction. The wolves rumbled in caution, but she raised her palms gently. "They saved me. I can't let you shoot them, she stammered, voice childishly earnest. Harlan exchanged an incredulous look with his partner, unaccustomed to seeing such devotion to wolves. Before the men could respond, the radio on Harlan's belt buzzed. We've located Clara's position, additional units and her parents en route. The chatter carried excitement. The girl is alive. In that electric moment, Harlan realized a crowd of well-intentioned but armed searchers would soon converge. If they startled the wolves, tragedy could unfold. Suddenly, from behind a nearby thicket, a faint yelp sounded. Another wolf, not among the immediate circle, limped into view, a juvenile with a bloodied hind leg. Clara gasped. The alpha turned swiftly, trotting to the wounded pup's side, muzzle pressed in concern. One female wolf joined, whining softly at the injury. The entire pack's posture changed from defensive to anxious, some pacing. Even from a distance, it looked severe, perhaps a trap or a gunshot wound from a frightened hunter. The younger ranger, Isaac, noticed, "These aren't savage beasts bent on harming the child. They're families caring for their own." Clara's eyes shone with empathy. She pointed, voice trembling. "He's hurt. We have to help." The alpha watched her, ears twitching, as though uncertain whether to let humans near the injured wolf. Harlan whispered to Isaac, "We can't approach a wounded wolf. They'll defend it." But Isaac, who had some field medic training, suggested they might attempt a sedation shot to safely examine, if the pack let them. This was uncharted territory, humans aiding a wolf that had effectively adopted a child. Tears streaming, Clara knelt by the alpha's side, hand trembling over its shoulder. The alpha regarded her, then looked at the wounded pup. A profound hush. The child, in a burst of childlike innocence, turned to the rangers. "He saved me. Please help him." She gently touched the alpha's muzzle, as if seeking permission. The alpha's gaze flicked to Harlan's lowered rifle, then back to the pup. Something akin to acceptance flickered in its eyes. Slowly, Isaac retrieved a small sedation dart from his pack. Harlan raised a hand to calm the pack, repeating a soft, "Easy, easy." Clara stayed close to the alpha, whispering reassurance. The alpha let out a low, wavering whine, like a signal. The other wolves parted slightly, maintaining a watchful stance. Isaac carefully aimed the dart at the pup's flank. A soft hiss, and the pup jerked, yelping in fear. Instantly, the pack bristled, but the alpha barked a sharp command, halting any charge. Though tense, the wolves obeyed the alpha, letting the pup stagger. Within moments, it slumped gently, sedation taking hold. Harlan and Isaac approached warily, bracing for an attack, but while a few wolves growled, none lunged. Clara stood near, lantern swinging by her side, tears shining with hope that they could fix the pup's leg. Isaac examined the wound, a jagged slash near the paw, probably from a metal trap. The pup's leg swelled with infection. Gently, Isaac cleaned it, wrapping it in gauze from his first aid kit. The alpha watched, tail low, muzzle inches from Isaac's arm, as though prepared to intervene if the pup showed distress. But the sedation kept it peaceful. For a surreal stretch of time, the forest clearing became an impromptu vet station. The men, who'd come expecting to rescue a child from savage beasts, instead found themselves rescuing a wolf with a child's collaboration. Clara hovered, offering encouraging pats to the alpha, occasionally stroking the pup's fur. The rest of the pack, restless but trusting their leader, formed a loose circle. Suddenly, the undergrowth rustled. Voices called, "Rangers! Clara! Where are you?" Daniel and June, along with a few more searchers, burst through the trees. They froze at the sight, their missing daughter alongside 2 rangers and an entire wolf pack, guns raised in reflex. A mother's gasp turned to a cry of alarm. "Clara!" June nearly collapsed with relief seeing her daughter alive, but the presence of so many wolves spiked her maternal terror. Harlan quickly motioned them to lower weapons. "They're not attacking," he hissed. "Everyone stay calm." Daniel, face chalk white, locked eyes with Clara. She mouthed, "I'm okay," tears brimming. Sensing the newcomers, the pack let out low growls, uncertain. The alpha stepped forward, tail half raised. Another standoff threatened. More armed searchers arrived, stunned by the bizarre tableau. The father, overcome with emotion, wanted to rush and grab Clara, but the rangers signaled him to hold. The tension soared again. If one shot rang out, all trust would crumble. Amid this swirl of conflicting impulses, parents wanting to reclaim their child, wolves guarding their wounded pup, rangers bridging the gap, something bigger than fear took hold. The watchers recognized an unprecedented moment, a peaceful mutual rescue between humans and wolves. The hush thickened as the alpha locked eyes with Daniel. On the ground, the sedated pup breathed steadily. Clara stood near, hands splayed in a silent plea. No one shoot. No one run. Let love and reason speak. In that heart-stopping pause, the fate of both a child's new bond with the wild and an injured wolf's survival hung in the balance. One misfire, they all sensed, would stain the forest with tragedy. One measured step toward empathy, though, might rewrite centuries of fear between humans and wolves, leading to an outcome so moving that words would fail those who witnessed it. The search party, Sienna's parents, and more armed rangers formed one half of the circle. The wolf pack formed the other. At the center, Clara, 2 rangers, and the sedated wolf pup. The alpha stood close to Clara, ears pivoting between her and the newcomers. The slightest trigger could erupt in violence or cause the wolves to flee, leaving the pup behind. Daniel and June yearned to sweep Clara into their arms, but they also saw how the alpha hovered protectively. For a child's sake, they refrained from sudden movement. Tears spilled down June's cheeks. She whispered, "My baby," voice trembling. Clara mustered a watery smile, beckoning them near with a slow wave. Harlan raised a hand, voice calm. "Everyone, breathe. These wolves haven't harmed Clara. Let's not break their trust." A younger ranger looked uncertain, rifle half lowered. Another read the situation in Harlan's eyes. They'd witnessed the wolves' synergy with the child. A silent understanding passed among some searchers. Perhaps the old demonization of wolves didn't apply here. With precarious caution, Daniel stepped forward, arms wide, showing no weapon. Clara pleaded softly, "Dad, it's okay. They're nice." At the word Dad, the alpha's ears flicked, as if aware of the emotional bond. Daniel inched closer until he stood a few paces from his daughter. The rest of the search party stayed back, sensing this father-daughter reunion carried more gravity than any rescue protocol. A few wolves bristled, uncertain about the new man approaching. One growled low, but the alpha snapped a warning bark that stilled it. Daniel sank to his knees, tears streaming as he saw the scratch on Clara's cheek, her disheveled hair. She swayed, stepping from the alpha's side into her father's arms. The pack tensed but allowed it. Joyful sobs mingled with the hush, the girl hugging him fiercely. June, seeing the cautious acceptance, edged closer too. Clara waved her over, voice choked with tears. "Mom, I'm fine, I promise." The alpha stared, head cocked. Meanwhile, Isaac gestured to the sedated pup. "We bandaged its leg, but the sedation won't last forever. We need to let it recover safely." Now the question arose, how to extricate Clara and the pup without spooking the pack. Daniel, eyes red, addressed the alpha softly, as if the wolf might understand. "Thank you for keeping my girl safe." The wolf cocked an ear, expression solemn. The quietness of the clearing felt sacred, as though the forest listened for the next move. The searchers recognized a once-in-a-lifetime chance to show the wolves no harm would come. Harlan, seeing the pup's predicament, decided to approach the alpha with the bandaged pup cradled gently in his arms. He moved slowly, letting Clara stand by his side. The alpha sniffed the pup, verifying its condition, and softly whined. Another female wolf pressed her muzzle against the pup's bandaged leg, a motherly gesture. Tears welled in the child's eyes. She realized the night she spent with these wolves had forged a bond. She wanted them safe, just as they protected her. She whispered to the alpha, "I have to go home, but I won't forget you." She extended a shaky hand. The alpha, unbelievably, pressed its nose to her palm, exhaling a gentle huff. Observers gasped, tears glistening in many eyes. This subtle act of acceptance reverberated among the watchers. Wolves seldom allowed humans to handle their injured, let alone share such intimate contact. Some searchers lowered their weapons entirely, hearts stirring with awe. A hush of mutual respect blanketed the clearing. Slowly, the pack parted, leaving a corridor between them. The alpha gave a short bark, glancing at the unconscious pup in Harlan's arms. Another bark, and half the wolves moved forward as if to follow their injured member. But the alpha signaled otherwise. Let the humans carry the pup to safety or care. Confusion flickered in the lesser wolf's posture, but the alpha insisted with a low growl of authority. Clara, now reunited with her parents, rose with them, turning to follow the searchers out of the forest. The alpha padded behind, flanked by a few close packmates. The rangers stiffened, expecting trouble. Instead, the wolves seemed determined to see the pup's path. Perhaps they sought reassurance that no harm would come to it. No one could recall a time when a wild pack voluntarily followed humans in such a manner. June clutched Clara, relief streaming from her eyes. Daniel gently stroked his daughter's hair, whispering gratitude for her survival. Meanwhile, the group marched carefully over leaf-strewn ground. The beep of ranger radios occasionally broke the hush. At intervals, the alpha paused, scanning the surroundings, ensuring no threat from behind. Everyone marveled at the calm synergy, wolves and humans walking side by side, a once impossible union. At the forest's edge, a helicopter circled overhead, searchlights flicking through the trees. The pack halted abruptly, uncertain of the roaring machine. Clara flinched, protective of her new friends, but Harlan signaled the chopper to hold position. The pilot radioed confusion. "We see multiple wolves with you. Copy that. Over." Harlan responded, "All stable. We have the child. Pup rescue in progress." The pilot's stunned silence said it all. Emerging from the forest into a campsite area, the wolves lingered at the final row of pines, bodies tense, still bridging that line between wild and civilized. Onlookers, rangers, paramedics, volunteers were struck mute by the sight of a battered child returning, flanked by wolves carrying a sedated young wolf. Daniel and June guided Clara forward, mindful of the precarious peace. In that pregnant moment, the story of a child lost overnight and a pack that sheltered her was about to break, leaving everyone in earshot utterly speechless. As the group, humans and wolves, emerged into a more open, grassy stretch near the campsite, a collective gasp rose among the volunteer searchers. Cameras clicked. Some people reflexively aimed rifles, but Harlan shouted, "Stand down!" Clara stood protectively in front of the alpha, arms outspread. Even her mother, though terrified, placed a hand on the alpha's flank in a show of trust. This extraordinary scene left bystanders reeling. Local reporters, alerted by radio chatter, arrived on the cusp of the clearing. The sight of 14 wolves surrounding a child defied all expectations. They scrambled to capture the moment on film. A swirl of excited voices threatened to spook the pack. The alpha rumbled, lowering its head. Clara murmured softly, "It's okay," though her own heart hammered. Park officials, though stunned, recognized the injured wolf pup needed professional vet care. Isaac gently laid the pup on a makeshift stretcher. The alpha hovered, sniffing the pup's muzzle. Another wolf approached, whining softly. The tension soared. Would they allow the pup to be taken away? Clara whispered, "They helped me, how we have to help them." The alpha glanced at her, then gave a short bark. Stepping back as though granting permission, some onlookers demanded the wolves be driven away for safety. Others pleaded for calm, praising their protective act. A heated debate erupted. "They're wild predators," versus "They saved the child's life." The scene threatened chaos. Harlan stepped in, commanding silence. Daniel, voice unsteady, told the crowd, "They never harmed Clara. They must sense we're not enemies." At the rising commotion, a few younger wolves paced, ears flat. The alpha snapped an order, but you could feel the pack's growing anxiety. This was not their domain. Flashing lights, camera shutters, loud human voices. One wolf let out a sharp bark, possibly a sign of retreat. Clara, alarmed, realized they might scatter violently. Veterinarians from a wildlife rescue group happened to be on site. assisting the search. Called forward, they examined the sedated pup. "We can transport it to our facility," they explained gently. "Set its leg properly. If the infection's not too advanced, it can rejoin the pack." The alpha, as if grasping the essence, lowered its muzzle to the pup's fur. That quiet, farewell-like gesture melted many hearts, especially as the mother wolf, white-flecked muzzle, whimpered in protest. Clara approached the alpha, wiping tears. "They'll fix him," she promised. "I'll make sure." Her voice, though tremulous, carried an uncanny resolve. The alpha sniffed her outstretched hand, pressed its head into her palm once more, acknowledging her vow. Observers wept openly at the raw empathy bridging species lines. In that instant, the alpha allowed the human vets to carry the pup away, though a deep sorrow flickered in its eyes. Reporters parted to let the stretcher pass, snapping photos. The footage of this once feral child-wolf alliance ignited a social media storm within minutes. Some corners of the internet demonized the pack, calling for them to be relocated or culled for public safety. Others championed them as forest guardians. The debate overshadowed the immediate relief that Clara was alive and well. Local environmental groups recognized these were the rumored shadow pack, a large wolf clan rarely seen. Over the years, farmers blamed them for livestock predation. Some advocated for culls. Now this rescue might shift public opinion or intensify hostility from those who fear powerful predators near farmland. The alpha's decision to spare and protect a lost child had turned them into a media phenomenon. The question was, would that lead to better protection or spark a conflict with local communities? With the pup gone, the alpha stared at Clara one last time, ears pricked, muzzle parted in a silent farewell. The rest of the pack circled behind. For a breathless moment, no one moved. Then the alpha sniffed the air, scanning the crowd. Satisfied no immediate threat loomed, it let out a low bark, pivoted and loped back into the pines. The pack followed, a silent exodus of ghostly silhouettes disappearing among the trunks. Clara collapsed into Daniel and June's arms, sobbing with relief, heartbreak and gratitude. The extraordinary event ended as abruptly as it began, leaving only footprints in the soft earth, human and wolf mingled, and a swirl of media and rescue activity. Yet for all present, the day's wonders were far from over. The pup's fate, the pack's uncertain future, and Clara's deep emotional bond demanded resolution. How to repay a debt to wolves once demonized, now revealed as unlikely protectors. In the aftermath of the wolves' departure, Clara's parents clung to her, tears of relief streaming freely. Paramedics fussed over her scratches and mild dehydration. The swirl of cameras, rangers and volunteers turned the campsite into a small media circus. Some sobbed at the miracle of her survival, others probed for details about the wolves' behavior. Clara, overwhelmed, offered halting answers. Local officials arrived, half in awe, half anxious. The newly minted rumor was unstoppable. 14 wolves surrounded a little girl and spared her. Journalists hounded Daniel and June for interviews. The mother shielded Clara from the brunt, stating only that they were grateful. Meanwhile, rangers behind the scenes grappled with how to handle the pack's changing public image. A wildlife rescue van pulled up to transport the sedated pup to a specialized facility. Clara insisted on seeing it one more time before it left. Vet staff carefully let her approach. She stroked the pup's muzzle with trembling fingers, whispering, "You'll be okay. I promise I'll see you again." The pup, still under sedation, twitched slightly. Observers found it impossible not to choke up. The next day, news outlets plastered headlines, "Girl befriended by wolves," "Forest protectors or perilous predators." Politicians weighed in. Some championed new protections for the region's wildlife. Others demanded more control. Online forums exploded with polarizing debates, fear versus reverence. Caught in the crossfire was the actual pack, now deeper in the forest, intangible to the swirling human drama. Back at home, Clara endured nightmares about the moment rifles pointed at her wolf friends. She also dreamed of running free with the alpha, unafraid. Her parents tried to help her process the experience, contacting child psychologists. The line between wonder and trauma was delicate. She'd formed a bond, but also faced the fragility of that bond in the face of human misunderstanding. In a staff meeting, Harlan and Isaac recounted how the wolves allowed them to help the wounded pup. Some colleagues scoffed, calling it a fluke. Others found the testimony deeply moving, pushing for a formal study of the pack's behavior. The forest manager proposed tranquilizing the entire pack for relocation, for public safety, spurring heated debate. Wouldn't that betray the pack's trust? Clara's father, grappling with the guilt of losing her in the forest, realized the pup's survival felt intimately linked to Clara's healing. He contacted the Wildlife Rescue Center, requesting updates. The pup's leg, it turned out, was infected but treatable. Surgeries might help it walk again. This triggered a plan. If it recovered, could they eventually return it to the pack? Clara latched onto that hope. Touched by the story, some local citizens organized a Protect Our Wolves campaign. They held a small vigil near the forest entrance, lighting candles to symbolize the bond between Clara and the alpha. Meanwhile, opposing voices labeled them naive. Wolves are still wild and dangerous, local ranchers argued. The tension soared. Would the romantic notion of the pack overshadow real issues like livestock predation? One evening, safe at home, Clara confided to her mother that she wanted to see the alpha again, or at least ensure the pack was well. June hesitated, rational adult fear surging, but she saw the yearning in her daughter's eyes. "We'll see," June said gently, exchanging a glance with Daniel. They recognized how deeply the forest encounter shaped Clara's heart. With the pup's convalescence ongoing at the Wildlife Center, the question loomed. Once healthy, could it be re-released to its pack? The staff usually avoided returning injured animals to a large, unknown pack. But this situation was singular. They saw videos of the pack's cooperation. The rescue center's lead veterinarian, Dr. Morales, suggested a carefully monitored approach, letting the pup rejoin family. The challenge was how to find them in the forest, how to ensure no conflict with ranchers or triggered hunts. Clara overheard Dr. Morales' brainstorming phone call with Daniel. She brightened. Maybe she could be part of that reintroduction. If the alpha recognized her, that might ease the pup's acceptance. It was a wild notion, a child bridging human-wolf relations. June and Daniel stood on the fence, torn between protective instinct and their daughter's emotional bond. Meanwhile, time ticked on. The pup healed slowly, and the alpha's pack presumably roamed, waiting or grieving. Would they accept their member back after weeks in human care? Could Clara safely venture near them again? The swirling moral questions laid the groundwork for a final test. The attempt to reunite the pup, shaped by love, caution, and a child's unwavering faith in the wolves that saved her life. At the Wildlife Rescue Center, the pup, nicknamed Silverpaw for its distinctive fur, underwent treatments for infection and a splint for the damaged leg. Photos of its brightening eyes spread across social media, melting hearts. The staff found it docile yet restless, howling at night as though calling to distant packmates. Meanwhile, Clara grew more insistent on visiting it. Finally, under careful supervision, Daniel drove Clara to meet Dr. Morales. They entered the pup's enclosure. The pup recognized Clara's scent, whining softly, tail wagging. Clara's eyes shone with tears as she stroked its neck. "You remember me," she murmured. Dr. Morales marveled at the pup's calm response. This was no ordinary rescue case. While heartwarming stories about Clara and Silverpaw circulated, local ranchers reported new livestock losses. Some pinned blame on the same large pack. Fearful voices demanded a cull. The alpha's group risked condemnation, overshadowing the miracle they'd performed. Environmental advocates launched petitions, calling for peaceful coexistence. Emotions soared, stoked by media coverage. Gathering with Dr. Morales, Isaac, Daniel, and a few concerned locals, Harlan proposed a reintroduction. "We returned Silverpaw to the wild near the pack's territory, with rangers on standby. If the alpha reclaims it peacefully, maybe we can document it, showing the pack's inherent structure and quell the paranoia." Some criticized the plan as naive. What if the pack or ranchers react violently? Clara, listening quietly, piped up, "The Alpha will trust me." A hush followed. The group recognized her extraordinary bond, but also the risk. June balked. "Absolutely not. She's just a child." Yet Daniel saw the unwavering determination in Clara's gaze, recalling how she calmed the Alpha before. Could she be the safest link to ensure a non-violent approach? Late that night, Clara's parents wrestled with the decision. June wept, hating the notion of sending her daughter near wild wolves again. Daniel, though equally terrified, recalled the Alpha's gentle guardianship. If this plan averted a cull, if it saved the pack from humans' worst instincts, maybe it was worth supporting. Ultimately, they hesitantly agreed, on condition that rangers heavily supervise and Clara only approach if absolutely safe. Simultaneously, ranchers threatened to take matters into their own hands if the wolf issue persisted. Officially, the Wildlife Service had 2 weeks to prove the pack wasn't a menace, or the ranchers would push for lethal measures. The clock ticked, intensifying the impetus to show the pack's peaceful side. Silverpaw's recovery timeline aligned with that urgent window. Harlan and Isaac scouted a location near the old clearing where the first rescue occurred. They placed remote cameras, set up vantage points for rangers, and ensured easy escape routes for the wolves. Dr. Morales tested tranquilizers in case the pack turned aggressive. They also prepared a safe zone for Clara, a wooden platform with partial enclosure. Nerves ran high. One misstep could lead to tragedy. As the release day neared, Clara visited Silverpaw more frequently, reading stories or humming lullabies. The pup licked her cheeks, tail wagging whenever she arrived. Media coverage soared, dubbing her the Wolf Whisperer. She felt shy about it, focusing only on reuniting the pup with its family. "They saved me. I have to save them," she thought fervently. With all preparations set, a date was chosen. The rescue team, rangers, and a controlled number of journalists would meet at dawn near the forest clearing. If the Alpha responded and recognized Clara, they might accept Silverpaw back. If not, or if spooked, the pack could vanish, or worse, clash with the onlookers. Tensions soared among all parties: ranchers, environmentalists, curious media watchers. Clara lay awake nights, heart pounding in anticipation. Even in her dreams, the Alpha's golden eyes urged her onward. No one could predict the final outcome. Would the pack reaffirm their bond with the little girl who once shared their night in the wild? Or would human meddling fracture that fragile trust, dooming the wolves to conflict? The stage was set for a grand confrontation, forging either a miraculous alliance or an irreparable rift, one that would decide the fate of the 14 wolves, the pup named Silverpaw, and the legacy of a girl who dared to call wolves her friends. Fog clung to the pine branches as vehicles rolled into a remote clearing near the foot of a forested ridge. Park rangers, wildlife rescue staff, Daniel, June, Clara, and a handful of press quietly unpacked gear. Their hush lay over them, matching the soft dawn light. Silverpaw, now fully healed, sat in a secure crate in the rescue van. The pup occasionally whined, sensing tension. Rangers had constructed a small raised platform for Clara with partial walls, an emergency barrier if wolves grew hostile. Cameras dotted the perimeter. A special vantage point was set for journalists at a safe distance. The plan: release Silverpaw, let it approach the pack's territory, and see if the Alpha responded. Should the wolves appear, Clara might step forward gently, bridging them. A group of ranchers arrived too, skeptical, arms folded. They insisted on seeing proof that these wolves wouldn't threaten livestock. They carried rifles in their trucks, just in case. Daniel and June frowned but said nothing, worried about the tension. The rangers insisted all weapons remain locked away unless absolutely necessary. Sitting on the edge of the platform, Clara felt her stomach twist. She glanced at the battered plush lion, a token of her forest night. She recalled the Alpha's soft eyes, the warmth of the pack's presence. Now faced with public scrutiny, she feared messing up. Daniel knelt beside her, hugging her shoulders. "Only do what feels right, honey," he murmured. She nodded, tears threatening but determined. At the center of the clearing, Dr. Morales and a ranger gently opened the crate. Silverpaw trotted out, sniffing the grass, posture tense. Freed from captivity, The pup turned in circles, eyes searching the tree line. Clara's heart pounded. She wanted to run out and comfort the pup, but the plan dictated patience. Cameras clicked in rapid succession. Everyone waited. Suddenly, Silverpaw tilted its head and let out a tentative, wavering howl. The sound carried across the silent pines. In the hush that followed, hearts hammered. Then, faintly from the ridge, an answering howl drifted back. Clara nearly jumped with excitement. They're here, the pack is near. The ranchers stiffened, exchanging uneasy looks, all eyes locked on a slope of thick undergrowth. Slowly, silhouettes emerged, wolf after wolf, peering from behind ferns. 14 just as before. The alpha stepped forward, scanning the array of humans and equipment vehicles. At the pup's excited yip, it lowered its head, tail wagging slightly. The pup hopped toward them, still limping a bit, but bursting with joy. Gasps rose from the watchers, tears pricking eyes. The alpha pressed its muzzle to the pup's face, verifying identity, while other wolves sniffed the bandaged leg, whining softly. A family reconnected. Seeing the joyous reunion, Clara overcame her fear. She glanced at the rangers, Khan, who gave a nod. She descended from the platform, stepping forward slowly, arms loose at her sides. The alpha froze, seeing her. A ripple passed through the pack. Some growled warily, but the alpha recognized the child, letting out a gentle whine. Silverpaw barked with excitement, bounding a few steps toward Clara, then turning back to the pack as if to say, "Look, it's her!" Journalists captured every moment. Grown men wiped tears. The ranchers, though uneasy, softened at the sight of an exuberant pup wagging its tail. The alpha, imposing as ever, locked eyes with Clara. She paused, body trembling. Then she resumed walking, bridging the gap. The pack parted slightly, enough to let her approach the alpha. The hush deepened. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Clara extended a quivering hand. The alpha sniffed it, exhaling a warm breath that ruffled her coat sleeve. Then, unbelievably, it nuzzled her palm, allowing her to gently stroke its neck. Applause rippled among the watchers, hushed yet intensely emotional. The alpha looked out at the crowd, seemingly unthreatened but cautious. A mother wolf stepped forward, checking on Clara. The pup hopped around them, giddy. One rancher, however, fidgeted, hand drifting near his truck. Another ranger hissed, "Don't you dare." The man whispered back, "We can't trust them." One slip. Harlan overheard, stepping to stand guard, ensuring no weapon was raised. Tension soared again. One shot could unravel everything. But the alpha, perhaps reading the fatherly calm from Daniel and the unwavering closeness of Clara, showed no aggression. For a shining moment, the clearing bathed in a radiant hush of acceptance. Child, wolves, humans, all coexisting. The alpha pressed its forehead gently to Clara's, eyes half closed, a gesture that left onlookers breathless. They truly have a bond. Cameras captured the shot that would soon circle the globe. A little girl, tears shining, face to face with the alpha wolf. But the story wasn't over. The wolves remained wild, and the question of future conflicts lingered. A single day's peace couldn't erase centuries of fear or the practical reality of farmland. The watchers, however, felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, compassion and understanding could reshape an ancient rift between man and wolf. That heart-stopping moment, Clara and the alpha in gentle contact, captured everyone's imagination. Even the most skeptical rancher felt his grip loosen on latent fears. The pup, Silverpaw, nestled between the alpha and Clara as if bridging the last gap between the wild and the child. Cameras whirred. Journalists stood transfixed, tears rolling unashamedly. Ranger Harlan cleared his throat, stepping forward to address the group. He proposed a radical idea. Let's secure this territory as protected habitat. The wolves have proved they can show mercy, even to a lost child. We owe them a chance to live without persecution. In return, we'll set up measures to keep them away from livestock, like improved fencing or monitored feeding zones. The alpha seemed to watch him, though of course it understood none of his words. A wave of murmuring. The ranchers, still uneasy, said if the government or local community funded protective measures, maybe they'd hold off on hunts. One older rancher, eyes damp with emotion, sighed. My father always told me wolves were devils. But seeing this, maybe I was wrong. A hush of possibility drifted across the clearing. The alpha flicked an ear, oblivious to human politics, but reliant on their outcome for survival. Clara's parents watched the proceedings in awe. Daniel said softly, "These wolves gave us back our daughter. We can't repay that by letting them be killed." June, tearfully, nodded. They joined in Harlan's plea, urging a peaceful resolution that secures farmland and respects the pack. The crowd's emotional momentum soared. Silverpaw nudged Clara's leg, letting out a short whimper, the bandage still around its hind paw. She knelt, hugging the pup gently. Dr. Morales watched carefully. The pup's tail wagged, muzzle pressing into Clara's cheek. Then, with a final bark, it scampered back to the alpha's side. The alpha sniffed the bandage, seeming to accept that humans had healed its young. The entire pack turned their attention to the forest edge, as if ready to depart once more. Suddenly, a shot rang out. Everyone jolted in shock. A single rancher from the far side had fired a warning shot into the air, spooked by the swirling wolves. The pack snarled, dropping into defensive stances. Clara screamed. The alpha bounded protectively between the wolves and the humans. Daniel lunged to shield Clara. Chaos threatened to erupt, cameras capturing the flash of muzzle. Harlan whirled, bellowing, "Stand down!" He tackled the rancher's arm, knocking the rifle aside before a second shot could ring out. Isaac and others pinned him. The man shouted, "I won't watch them roam free." Fear sparked in his eyes, as though he realized too late the enormity of what he'd done. Growls rippled, some wolves inching forward. The alpha barked a sharp command, halting them mid-lunge. Clara sobbed, cowering with her parents. Tension soared. Just as the final piece was within reach, a single bullet threatened to unravel it. Everyone braced for an all-out attack or a frenzied chase. But the alpha didn't signal an assault. Instead, it approached the rancher from a distance, eyes blazing. The pinned man, trembling, locked gazes with the alpha. The rest of the pack fanned out in a line, tails stiff. The standoff crackled with raw energy. If the alpha gave the sign, the wolves could tear him apart. Yet no such sign came. The alpha let out a furious snarl, a warning, then turned to rejoin Silverpaw. The message was clear. We do not kill if we can avoid it. You, too, should learn that. Onlookers exhaled en masse, hearts pounding. The rancher realized he'd been spared. Harlan, seething, demanded the man's rifle. The man, pale and shaking, surrendered it. "I'm sorry," he mumbled, eyes flicking to Clara, who still wept. The alpha's mercy overshadowed any more words. A deeper hush set in, pregnant with realization. The wolves had every right to retaliate, but they chose not to. With that final demonstration of power and mercy, the alpha turned, letting out a single, authoritative howl. The entire pack pivoted as one, loping gracefully back into the pine shadows. Silverpaw, after a long, forlorn look at Clara, followed. The child pressed a hand to her chest, tears streaming, but acceptance glowed in her watery smile. They belonged to the forest. She belonged with her family. Everyone stood stunned, haunted by the raw magnitude of what they'd witnessed. A child, welcomed among wolves, bridging a moment of conflict with unwavering trust. The single gunshot nearly shattered it all, but the alpha's choice reaffirmed their unusual bond with Clara. Cameras kept rolling, capturing the pack's retreat into ancient wilderness. Now the crucial question loomed: could these events spark lasting change in the region's attitude toward wolves? Or was this just a fleeting miracle overshadowed by centuries of mistrust? The final test beckoned: how each faction, ranchers, environmentalists, rangers, would respond to a phenomenon that defied logic, yet demanded a re-evaluation of man's relationship with nature's apex predators. Amid the hush, Clara's tears of joy and sorrow merged, as though heralding an ending that might just rewrite the forest's future. A heavy silence wrapped the group as the last wolf disappeared into the forest gloom. The hush broke only when Clara began to sob in her mother's arms. Daniel patted her back gently, his own tears brimming. The guilty rancher stood off to the side, face ashen. Rangers confiscated his weapon, giving him a sharp reprimand. Some demanded he be charged with reckless endangerment. Cameras panned across the emotional scene. A trembling child, stunned onlookers, the lingering echo of the Alpha's grace. Commentators would soon spin this into a global headline. For now, though, the people in that clearing felt a sense of unity, witnesses to something inexplicably sacred. Even the ranchers realized how close they came to unleashing bloodshed, yet the wolves responded with restraint. Focus shifted to ensuring Silverpaw's reintroduction was successful. Dr. Morales approached Harlan, voice hushed. "The pup ran off with them. That's good. Maybe it can reintegrate naturally." Clara, though sorrowful at losing physical contact, brightened. "He's free," she whispered, "back where he belongs." The onlookers all felt a swell of relief. No chain, no captivity, just nature. Righted. Park officials convened a brief meeting under a tall pine. Harlan and local environmental representatives argued that, with widespread publicity, the region must adopt stricter protective measures for wolves, like non-lethal deterrents for farms. Some ranchers balked, but the day's events had softened their stance. They grudgingly agreed to test new fences, alarms, or compensation programs to reduce conflict. Tense negotiations began, overshadowing the clearing but pointing to potential breakthroughs. Later that afternoon, reporters cornered Clara for an interview. She struggled, tears slipping when asked, "Will you see the Alpha again?" She could only reply, "I don't know. I just hope they're safe." June hurried to cut the questioning short, seeing her daughter's emotional exhaustion. Daniel and June realized they faced a choice: keep Clara away from the forest to avoid future risks, or allow her to remain an ambassador for these wolves. The child had displayed courage and compassion beyond her years. Ultimately, they decided on a balanced approach. They'd never let her roam unaccompanied, but they wouldn't forbid carefully guided visits with rangers. The forest no longer was just a site of near tragedy. It was a place of wonder they all felt compelled to respect. That evening, as the group prepared to leave, the rancher who fired the shot approached Clara. He knelt, hat in hand, eyes brimming with remorse. "I'm sorry, little one," he muttered. "I was afraid." She studied him, hugging her plush lion, then offered a tiny nod. "They were afraid too," she replied. The man's shoulders sagged, tears forming. "I see that now." He turned to Daniel, quietly adding, "I'll talk to my neighbors about giving these wolves a chance." Soon after, the story exploded internationally. 14 wolves and a brave girl, a tale of mutual mercy. The footage of Clara hugging the alpha wolf went viral, spawning debates on wildlife ethics, child safety, even bridging species communication. Offers poured in to fund a documentary or a children's book. Overwhelmed, Daniel and June restricted press access, wanting to preserve Clara's childhood. Despite all attention, a single question lingered in many hearts. Will the wolves truly remain safe from future hunts? That resolution demanded more than a single day's handshake. Policies needed changing, hearts needed healing. Meanwhile, the alpha and its pack roamed the forest at dusk, howling across moonlit ridges. Did they sense gratitude or a renewed caution? No one could say. As night fell, Clara gazed out her bedroom window, the plush lion by her side. She whispered a silent goodnight to the alpha she believed might be howling in the forest. Though physically separated, a thread of trust bound them. The final test approached, a culminating moment that might either cement this new human-wolf harmony or reveal that fear can never fully be laid to rest. In the days following the reintroduction, local officials, ranchers, park rangers, and wildlife groups scheduled a pivotal meeting, a wolf summit. The aims included forging new guidelines to ensure minimal livestock conflict, humane solutions to territory overlap, and broad public education. The impetus for these reforms hinged on the public's emotional reaction to Clara's story, a living testament that wolves and people can coexist. To everyone's surprise, the summit organizers asked if Clara might attend, symbolizing the fragile alliance. Daniel and June were wary, but seeing their daughter's unwavering commitment, they agreed. The event took place in the town hall, a place usually hosting mundane civic affairs, now thrumming with media presence and tension. Ranchers, concerned about financial losses, demanded compensation funds. Environmentalists insisted that the Alpha's pack showed exemplary behavior. Why punish them for old prejudices? Rangers offered data on non-lethal deterrence. The debate raged in front of an audience of local citizens. Cameras streamed the session live. At times, voices rose, caught near shouting. Clara, seated near the front with her mother, clutched her plush lion, heart pounding. At a crucial juncture, a rancher rose, passionately describing a recent calf lost to some predator. He demanded immediate culling rights if more livestock vanished. Tension spiked. Then he spotted Clara's tearful stare. Something softened in his voice. Maybe we can try the new fences, he conceded grudgingly. Her presence remained a powerful reminder of the alternative, violence overshadowing compassion. Midway through the debate, an urgent phone call reached Ranger Harlan. He answered quietly, face growing grim. A group of renegade hunters was spotted heading into the forest, reportedly aiming to kill the Alpha. The rumor, they planned to claim a bounty from certain private landowners unaffected by the summit's proposals. Gasps rippled through the hall. If these men found the pack, all hope of peaceful resolution might vanish in gunfire. Chaos erupted. Park rangers scrambled. Clara sprang up, eyes wide with horror. She begged her father, "We have to warn them, warn the Alpha." The crowd reeled at the notion. Daniel initially refused, not wanting to put her in harm's way again. But the rangers needed someone who truly understood the pack's location and signs. In a dramatic shift, Ms. Roland from the Wildlife Department, remembering Clara's role, asked, "Clara, can you show us the route they took you through the forest?" The child swallowed, nodding. She wasn't certain but willing to try. A joint team of rangers, local law enforcement, and a few determined volunteers, including Daniel, Seames Harlan, and Isaac, mobilized. They hopped into vehicles, heading for Silverleaf's edges. The plan: intercept the hunters before they reached the pack's territory. Time weighed heavy, each passing minute an opportunity for lethal confrontation. Clara, an unexpected guide, accompanied them, though her mother's heart clenched with fear. She sat in the lead ranger's truck, plush lion on her lap, tears trembling in her voice as she recounted each forest landmark she remembered. By the time they arrived, the sun dipped behind the pines, casting the forest in dusky gloom once again. Flashlights bobbed among the tall trunks. Radio chatter crackled. Shots fired. Anyone hear that? Tension soared. Harlan barked instructions. Form 2 lines, spread out but stay in sight. No one fires unless absolutely necessary. Clara's presence forced the group to remain extra cautious. Nobody wanted a repeat of the campsite fiasco. Leading them deeper than she'd ever ventured alone, Clara recognized the stream where she first drank with the Alpha, then the clearing where she spent the night. She pointed silently, tears shining, wishing she could speak the wolves' language to warn them. The group moved in near silence, scanning for signs of the renegade hunters, tracks, broken twigs. A hush so deep it felt the forest itself anxiously waited. A muffled gunshot cracked in the distance. Everyone froze, hearts pounding. Clara's face went white. Harlan signaled them to hurry. The final confrontation loomed. If the hunters reached the unsuspecting pack, everything Clara and the community worked for would collapse in a heartbeat. The swirling beams of flashlights vanished among the pines, forging the final push toward a climax that would decide the fate of the 14 wolves and the precious, precarious bridge between human hearts and the wild realm. Flashlights flickered among towering pines as the rescue team raced toward the gunshots. The hush of Silverleaf felt ominous, broken only by Clara's ragged breathing and the shuffle of boots on pine needles. Harlan scanned the undergrowth for signs of movement, rifle lowered but ready. Daniel clutched Clara's hand, determined to keep her safe. The child held her lantern, that same battered source of light from her night with the wolves, like a beacon guiding them toward an uncertain destiny. At last, they found fresh footprints in the damp soil. One ranger stooped, whispering, 2 men, possibly 3, heading northeast. Isaac radioed a second squad, instructing them to approach from an alternate path. Time was crucial. The Alpha and its pack might be near. Another distant shot reverberated, sending a flock of startled birds overhead. Clara's heart pounded. Fear for the wolves overshadowed her own safety. As they advanced, Clara spotted a dark lump by a creek bed. She gasped, running forward before anyone could stop her. Harlan hissed, "Careful!" But she was already kneeling over a fallen wolf. The creature panted in pain, blood matting its fur. It wasn't the Alpha, but a juvenile female. Daniel tried to pull Clara back. She sobbed, "No, they shot her." The wolf's eyes were dull with shock, though it tried to lift its head at the child's approach. Another heartbreaking sign that the hunters were dangerously close. Isaac crouched beside Clara, rummaging for a first aid kit. The bullet wound looked severe. The wolf let out a pained whine, but recognized Clara's scent from her time among the pack. Unbelievably, it didn't lash out. Harlan barked urgent orders. "Isaac, do what you can. We must keep moving. We'll come back for you." Isaac nodded, pressing gauze to the wound. The rest sprinted deeper into the trees, leaving the child torn. Should she remain to comfort this wolf or push on to save the rest? Tears streaming, she turned to Daniel. "I have to find the Alpha. The pack is in danger." Her father's eyes brimmed with heartbreak. He saw unwavering determination. With a trembling sigh, he nodded, letting her lead them on, trusting the improbable bond she had with the wolves. They left Isaac to care for the wounded female, forging onward. Minutes later, the search party heard voices echoing. "We got a big one up ahead. This'll fetch a price." Harlan motioned for lights off, approaching stealthily. Through the gloom, they glimpsed 2 armed men, rifles poised, scanning for movement. Another wolf lay motionless, presumably dead from a shot. Clara stifled a sob. Daniel clamped a hand over his own mouth to hold in a cry of anguish. The Alpha was nowhere in sight, but the men pressed forward, clearly hunting the rest of the pack. Before anyone could react, Clara wrenched free of her father's grip, stepping out into the open. Harlan hissed her name in alarm. The men whipped around, startled by the child's sudden appearance. Guns raised. "What the?" one growled. She shouted, voice cracking, "Stop! They never hurt me. They're good." Tears glistened, but her small frame radiated fierce bravery. Harlan and Daniel lunged forward, arms raised to shield Clara. The men, rattled, nearly squeezed triggers. Another voice, one of the men, eyes wild, snapped, "Kid, get away! These are dangerous beasts!" Clara shook her head fiercely. "They're not!" Then, a low growl reverberated. Emerging from behind a fallen log came the Alpha, eyes blazing, hackles raised. The rest of the pack ghosted into view, flanking their leader with menacing intensity. For an instant, it seemed certain blood would be shed. The Alpha advanced, seeing the dead wolf on the ground. The pack behind him bristled, savage grief fueling their stance. The men, terrified, pointed rifles. The entire forest crackled with lethal potential. Harlan bellowed, "Lower your weapons!" But tension soared too high. A single twitch could unleash a massacre. Driven by desperation, Clara threw herself between the hunters and the Alpha, arms outspread as she'd done before. She locked eyes with the Alpha, sobbing, "Please, don't. You saved me." The Alpha's snarling lessened, ears flicking. The rest of the pack paused, uncertain, gazes swinging between their fallen comrade and the child who once found shelter among them. Seeing the child risk her life for wolves, the men's resolve wavered. Their hands trembled on rifles. One hissed, "We can't shoot with a kid in the way." The other panicked, gulped, stepping back. Ranger reinforcements, stealthily circling, shouted, "Drop your weapons." In that blinding swirl of adrenaline, the men realized they were outnumbered, by rangers and by wolves. With no safe shot, they reluctantly laid their rifles down. Harlan and Daniel rushed forward, disarming the hunters. The Alpha let out a guttural snarl but didn't pounce, as though acknowledging the child's pleas. The men were cuffed, cursing. The pack, though trembling with fury over their fallen members, held position under the Alpha's control. A miracle, No final act of bloodshed. Clara collapsed to her knees, hugging the alpha's neck. "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears soaking its fur. The alpha gently licked her cheek, eyes heavy with sorrow. The pack gathered near the dead wolf, letting out mournful howls that carved the forest with heartbreak. Everyone present, rangers, Daniel, the subdued hunters, stood transfixed by the primal grief. In that echoing requiem, fear and hatred melted away. The men who aimed to kill saw the depth of wolf loyalty and sorrow. Harlan signaled paramedics to check on the second wounded wolf with Isaac. The alpha offered a final glance at Clara, as if to say, "Your presence tempered our wrath." Then, carefully stepping around the child, it joined its packmates in howling for the lost. Clara's chest felt torn open by sadness at the wolves' loss, yet relief flooded her that no further deaths occurred. The pinnacle of conflict had come and gone in the space of heartbeats. Guns, wolves, a child bridging them. Now the future of the pack hung on how humans responded to this tragic but transformative moment. The crisis ended, but tears and heartbreak abounded. Paramedics arrived to transport the injured wolf, while rangers respectfully covered the body of the fallen one. Clara, physically drained, accepted a warm blanket. The alpha and remaining wolves drifted deeper into the trees, howling a lament that echoed under the moon's pale glow. That haunting chorus signaled a farewell to the wolf lost to human bullets, and perhaps a final testament to their fleeting bond with Clara. Come morning, the forest no longer buzzed with armed tension. The hunters, now in custody, faced charges for illegal pursuit and endangering a child's life. Clara and her family offered testimonies, while the rangers attested that these men had ignored repeated warnings. Public outrage soared, fueling calls for stricter penalties for unlicensed wolf hunting. On social media, pictures of Clara standing bravely between the alpha and the rifles became iconic, a symbol of a child's courage overshadowing generations of fear. In a small clearing, wildlife advocates and rangers buried the wolf's body, offering a quiet memorial. Clara and her family, along with Harlan and Isaac, attended. They placed a sprig of pine on the grave, tears in their eyes. A hush of respect reigned. The alpha didn't appear. Perhaps the pack grieved alone. Yet the sentiment was shared. This creature died for no reason other than human ignorance. In the following weeks, the Wolf Summit reconvened. This time, motivated by the tragic loss, ranchers and officials hammered out real solutions: improved fencing, guardian dogs, compensation funds for livestock losses, and a partial buffer zone around critical wolf den sites. The forest near Silverleaf became subject to new protective regulations. Some cynics doubted lasting success, but many saw a glimmer of hope that man and wolf could find balance. At home, Clara struggled with nightmares about gunshots and the memory of the fallen wolf. Therapy sessions helped her process the mix of wonder and grief. Her parents noticed she clung to her plush lion less often, perhaps because she now recognized real wolves carried a complexity beyond fairy tales. They could be kind, fierce, vulnerable, majestic. Over time, she found purpose in telling her story, urging classmates to protect wildlife. Months later, Dr. Morales declared the second wounded wolf, the juvenile female, recovered enough to be released. With cautious optimism, a small team, joined by Clara and her father, ventured back to the clearing. No cameras, no large crowd, just a quiet release. Clara, heart pounding, called softly, not sure if the alpha would respond. From the forest's edge, faint movement stirred. The alpha appeared, older wolf scars glinting in partial sunlight. The mother wolf with white-flecked muzzle came too. They observed from a distance as the team opened the carrier. The juvenile stepped out, tail wagging timidly. The alpha advanced, sniffing the bandages. A short bark signaled acceptance. To Clara's joy, the juvenile nuzzled the alpha, bounding in a circle as if telling them all about its human care. The family reformed. No longer was the pack 14 in number, but a battered 13, still healing, still together. Clara stood, tears rolling anew, but this time they were tears of closure. She felt Daniel's hand on her shoulder. They watched the wolves fade into the pines, The alpha spared her one lingering gaze, then turned away. She smiled through silent sobs, understanding that their paths had crossed in the darkest hour for a reason, and now each returned to their rightful place. Back in town, Clara's story became a catalyst for ongoing wolf education programs. Tourists visited wanting to see the miracle forest, though rangers carefully regulated access to preserve the pack's privacy. Over time, sightings of the alpha or the newly reunited juvenile soared, with no further violence. Farmers reported fewer livestock losses, crediting new protective measures. The tragedy that claimed one wolf's life also paved a road to deeper harmony. On a warm summer dusk, Clara and her parents strolled along a forest trail, accompanied by Harlan. They didn't venture too deep, respecting the pack's space. At the tree line, Clara paused, listening. A faint, distant howl carried over the breeze. She lifted her face to the wind, heart swelling with gratitude. The memory of that extraordinary night, the circle of 14 wolves, glowed in her mind. She whispered, "Thank you," certain at least one keen pair of lupine ears might hear. In the hush that followed, everything felt at peace. No gunfire, no terror, just a child, grown braver, standing at the boundary between human civilization and the ancient wilderness. And though words might fail to capture it fully, the alliance forged by that improbable rescue, 14 wolves safeguarding a little girl, remained etched in Silverleaf's lore, leaving everyone who heard the tale speechless in wonder at the power of empathy that can unite two worlds once believed forever apart. Thank you for joining us on this deeply moving journey. If you found hope and inspiration in Clara's story and the wolves' extraordinary mercy, please subscribe for more emotionally rich narratives and share with friends who believe in the power of compassion. Remember, sometimes the bonds we fear the most between humans and nature can become the very miracles that open our hearts. Until next time.